Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dychronic, your host here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Xur's inventory, my recommendation, and his random rolls for February 12th, 2021. You can find the Xur in his ready location in the tower. Just head over into the hangar, and in the top left section of the hangar, you can find him right here in these rafters. And as this is a new season, there is something that is new, where you actually, the first time you go to the Xur, you have this thing where you actually get to accept your exotic cipher rather than accepting it from his inventory. Now, obviously, the inventory has changed kind of as far as the organization, but it's obviously the same. Starting today with the weapon, today we have the Hard Light. Now the Hard Light has gone through a number of, let's say, iterations in the meta. It used to be absolutely broken in PvP with infinite range, great stability in the auto rifle meta, and the fact that it's a 600 should tell you that it was really, really good. Since then they have reduced the infinite range to a reduced fall off, where it's actually a much better fall off than most auto rifles, but it's still no longer infinite. And they also significantly reduced the ricochet damage after ricocheting those bullets. Whereas before, I think it was like twice or 3 times the damage after ricochet. Now it's like an extra 35%. In my opinion, that was not necessary. Nobody actually got ricochet kills. It was mostly just on accident. And the other one allows you to change the weapon between Solar, Arc, and Void. This is usually more useful in PvE, but more recently we're getting more and more exotics that depend on getting a specific damage type. For example, the Nezarec Sin depends on getting Void damage. You can pick Void very specifically and get the damage type you need. Obviously, Nezarec Sin is not a new exotic, but there are some new ones, like the new Warlock exotic. Depends on a specific type. Hard Light will fulfill that no matter what. Moving on to the Hunter exotic today, we have the Young Ahamkara Spine. This one is focused around your Trip Mine Grenade, where the duration and blast radius is increased, and ability damage grants Trip Mine Grenade energy. This includes all ability damage, and most people use this in the Crucible by combining the Trip Mine with the Explosive Knight from Way of the Outlaw. And together, they do one-shot kill enemies in the Crucible, and both of them do give you that ability damage and more Trip Mine Grenade energy. From my experience, Trip Mine Grenades are pretty much one of the best, if not the best, grenades to have on Solar, and Solar is pretty good in the Crucible right now. The only thing that's really lacking is going to be Arc. Obviously, with a lot of stasis going around, the new stasis subclass, it may be a bit tight, but I still think Solar has a great place. I don't find this to have very much efficacy in PvE, though. As far as the role goes, you'd like to see a lot of discipline, a lot of strength, so you can get more ability damage. You have a decent discipline and an okay amount of strength, but everything else is pretty much all over the place, and obviously you'd like to see a lot more recovery and mobility for hunters and for PvP. So not the best role in this exotic, but it's not a bad role either. Moving on to the Titan exotic, we have the Dune Marchers. If you've never heard of it, it increases sprint speed, and while sprinting for a short period of time, you build up static charge, and then you melee attack an enemy, and that will chain damage to nearby enemies. And it goes, I think, what, 10-15 meters to the next enemy, and then from there, another 10-15 meters to the next enemy, and it does chain off of dead enemies on their ghosts, allowing you to hit a lot of enemies with just your melee attack, which is very strong, and I have definitely a top 3 exotic for Titans in the Crucible. In PvE, it's mostly a stun mechanic, and obviously it's very dangerous to get in close range, so in the high level it doesn't really have a place, but it is pretty fun being able to stun a whole battlefield, although it doesn't do a lot of damage. As far as the role goes, you'd like to see a lot of mobility and strength, and because it's Crucible, more recovery and resilience. It has resilience, it has recovery, and everything else is middling, so not the best role, but a pretty good role if you definitely have something below 50. And finally, for the Warlock exotic today, we have the Felwinter's Helm, an exotic that could be really good, except for one major thing. If you've never heard of it before, the Arc, Solar, and Void melee kills create a burst of energy that weakens nearby enemies. What this means is it basically puts a smoke bomb effect on that enemy and weakens them to take more damage. So in PvP, you actually get blinded, and then that returns back your vision. It's actually a pretty generous radius, around 5 meters. The issue is that it always comes from your body. If it came from the target, i.e. using a ranged melee like Celestial Fire, hitting that target and then hitting everybody nearby, that would actually be really strong. Hitting many enemies, blinding them, weakening them, telling you where they are, it would be really strong, but having you and forcing you to get that close to that many enemies, you'd rather use another exotic like Karnstein Armlets to be able to heal through it, something like that. As far as the role goes, you like to see a lot of mobility, recovery, and strength, and honestly, it has a lot of that. It's a very spiky distribution across many of those things. Obviously not a lot of recovery, but a lot of Warlock gear has a lot of recovery, so it's not a big deal. So I'd like to say it's a pretty good role for an exotic that is not really that good. And as a friendly reminder, you can use the Xur for your power grind. If you are, for example, like I am, starting on your Titan, trying to max out your Titan as much as physically possible, you can actually buy these, Hunter and Warlock armors for your Ranger, Hunter, and Warlock, and they actually get that power bonus, because this is going to be 1273, 1274, and they're going to be able to start with that armor that's much higher. So I'm going to wait until the end of the week so I can get the highest power before switching over, so I get that biggest benefit. And finally, pick up an exotic engram if you have a ton of legendary shards, because these are always guaranteed to have a high total stats, and they are also going to be guaranteed to be an exotic that you've never received before if you're still missing exotics. For me, I have every exotic outside of the Lost Sector pool, but I am personally looking for a high stat roll, and this is a pretty high stat roll. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good roll. Getting a 76 is like, ooh, god damn. I mean, it's no 69 like this one, but it's pretty good. And that is going to be pretty much the end of the video. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions, concerns, or if you just really like penguins, please let me know. It is very important for me to know. Also, come check out my live streams that I have right after this Zerg video, as well as all the time you can see on screen right now. We oftentimes have open lobbies for raids, for nightfalls, for the power grind we're all doing right now. Come join us, link in the description down below to my Twitch. And of course, as always, shout out to my patrons. Specifically, thank you to Medibuju, Mama Dad, Shadow Moon, Joe Smith, Monday, Natalie Halpin, Steve Bachmanwitz, Justin Ryer, Raymond Showman, Yoon Panther for their support on Patreon. Without their help, we may not be able to spin as much as we are spinning now. Now, this is one of my favorite emotes because it just keeps spinning. That was a bad one. Right, well, that's the end of it. Hope you guys enjoyed. My name's Dychronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.